So hello everyone, today we have Adil with us, who's a co-founder of Oware Technologies, and today we'll be talking about their startup, their story, and hear some stuff from them. So welcome on the episode, Adil, and why don't you take a start and tell us about yourself, your co-founder, and your startup.
Perfect. So thank you, Umair, for having us and giving us this opportunity. So I'm Adil. I'm the co-founder at Oware, predominantly looking at product strategy, marketing, while the other co-founder, Raza, he looks at operations, commercials, and financials. So I think our journey started back in 2019, actually. So I had left Kareem and I had started my own business. So I was in Karachi. I moved to Lahore when my shares vested. So I had some money. I opened up a lighting manufacturing company. So it was a very small business. I was sourcing, distributing.
So Kareem was your first
Kareem was my first.
job, and what's your educational background prior to that?
So I graduated from IBA, did my
Okay.
bachelor's in accounting and finance, and then after graduation, I joined Kareem as an intern.
Okay.
That was also a little of a life decision I had to take because initially I wasn't offered a role at a MNC as well. But I think that played out well. So I joined Kareem as an intern and then later on worked my way and I was leading the B2B vertical, Kareem for Business vertical across Pakistan. So that was basically offering employees with transportation. So I'm not sure if you heard of, so there's a bill to company option where employees can bill their ride to the company.
Okay.
So worked on that, made the PRDs for the entire product, worked with the product team, sales team, commercial teams, operations team, and ensured that employees were having a little superior experience to the normal consumers. That worked out well. So in the first year, we enrolled really large companies like Telenor, ICI, Jazz. So these were companies with like 1,000+ employees, and we were managing transportation for them. And in essence, it made easier for them to commute because they didn't have to go through the hassle of just raising any reimbursement to the company. So it was directly linked to the company's admin portal.
So after Kareem, you started your lighting business, and then this Oware, right?
Yes. So after Kareem, I also worked at Daraz for a bit. So I was basically the brand manager for Daraz Mall. So this was the first time after the acquisition of Alibaba, we had launched Daraz Mall in Pakistan, similar to Lazada Mall. So I was predominantly leading the campaign management for all the brands. So Unilever, L'Oreal, P&G, I was looking after their entire brand real estate available on the platform. So it was up to me to manage the conversion, the blended GMV conversion. So these marketing brands would commit a lot in marketing. So that would lead to a lot of acquisition, so a lot of users coming onto the platform. But I had to make sure like there was an optimum conversion in GMV. For example, if a cosmetics brand is placed on the front page, so would their product sell or not? So that, because we had some commercial real estate value. So that was fun. So I managed that for about 5 months. When my shares vested, I had some money, so I opened up my own business. It was a manufacturing company. So LED was a new technology coming in Pakistan. It was far cheaper and superior in terms of reliability than like energy savers and light bulbs, like fluorescent bulbs. So I set up my own assembling facility in Lahore. So I was going to China, sourcing all the raw materials, bringing them to Pakistan. Building my own brand was called Novo. It is still called Novo, it's still functioning. Then selling the product as well. So sourcing, manufacturing, and then distributing as well. So I had started operations in Lahore. So I was initially started from just one type of light bulb. It was 12-watt LED bulb, but expanded to my product portfolio to about 200 different SKUs.
Okay.
And I think one of the greatest achievement for me was that I sold about 2 million units in the first year, based out of Lahore. And that's where I start figuring out the problem in Pakistan, because I wanted to increase my sales further, but I had to set up a warehousing unit. I had to hire a team. Then I had to install like a good inventory management software. So in the 5 months, I was just figuring out how I can increase my revenue. That led me to connect with Raza. So Raza at that point in time was the CFO at one of the largest multinational distribution houses in Pakistan. So I connected him through my brother. We got onto a call, and I just like explained him what my problems were, and so I did not know anything about distribution, like what warehousing is, how does distribution work, what are the order bookers supposed to do, how do you translate all that data back to the head office where I'm sitting, so I know I have complete visibility. So I had a lot of questions. The call actually went up longer than 2 hours. Interesting thing was that Raza at that point in time was also advising Retailer. Uh, so he was the initial founder, and then he was advising them. And Retailer or B2B startups were also facing similar problems. Because in this age you can increase your demand in a very scalable way, as in you can spend more on marketing, you can increase the acquisition funnel, but to fulfill those orders you need to have warehousing capacity spread out across Pakistan. So it was difficult to open up a warehouse or get flexible space in Pakistan and reliable space. So these startups were also facing these problems, and he also thought about this problem and he related with me. So after the call we didn't stay in touch, but I had an idea, so I actually did a pilot. So I went to Mardan. I looked for a warehousing space there, met with the brokers, found like the right space I could operate from. Like I got that space on rent, then invested in the initial capex that was required. Hired the team. That was also challenging because to find people, especially who were experienced in supply chain in Mardan, installed or implemented the software I was using. So in essence, it was like a 4-month struggle. The impact that I was like in the 5th month, the impact that I saw was that my top line grew by 30%.
Why Mardan actually?
So I was in the SEC B category. So if you look at Mardan, I was operating out of Lahore. So Mardan actually led to distribution into the western side. So I could distribute to Aptabad, I could distribute to Peshawar, I could distribute to lower KPK. So it was a strategic location. In that sense, and that's what I saw. Like when I opened up a new area, it drastically increased my sales by 30%. But since I had that background in number crunching, so I started working on the unit economics. So on average, what I saw was that I was utilizing my per square feet space. So on average, it was just 50% of utilization. So 50% of my warehouse was actually empty, and I was paying for that cost. So I called back Raza, and I explained him this problem, and he had also like learned more about the B2B e-commerce operations, how they work and how they're operating. So I think in essence we figured out like this is a need. Interesting thing is I also called one.
But I mean, were there any already companies who were doing warehousing? I mean, part of it is also connected with logistics. So logistics something have to have some kind of warehouse and systems already there. So or they were not enough. So I mean.
So yes, you're absolutely right. So I actually called up one of the biggest 3PL companies in Pakistan. And when I called them and I said like, look, I want this space, can you give it to me? They're like, first sign like a 5-year contract with us, then agree on a 90% minimum charge. I didn't have that volume. So that was just directly it was restricting my business growth. And that's the problem in Pakistan, because we do have warehouses, we do have warehousing companies, but they're just working with the top tier ones. So probably the Unilevers, the PNGs, the RBs of Pakistan. But for the small medium businesses or the mid-tier businesses, there is no other fulfillment option available. And after that, especially a business who's tech enabled. So I think this was the problem that we saw. And being a small business myself, I saw this potential because 3 years back, a lot of people were starting their own businesses. So the mindset was that young people after graduation, they would either join a startup or they would open up their own business. So you see a lot of e-commerce businesses opening up. And so the idea at that point was that yes, we need to open this, but we do not essentially want to focus on the last mile. So the last mile is actually like from the dark store or the last fulfillment center to the consumer who's sitting at home or office. So there are a lot of companies operating in that space. So the problem actually lied in the back end supply chain stream. So when the goods leave the manufacturer to the distribution center, and from there to the dark store or the retail store or any like last distribution point before the consumer. So there was no optimization over there. Everything was very antiquated. It was being done in a very manual way through pen and paper. The conversations were actually being done through WhatsApp, email. An interesting stat was that 80%.
WhatsApp seems to be a de facto business
Yeah.
communication
Yeah.
engine of Pakistan, kind of.
Absolutely, and what hurts communication through any like non-standardized form of platform is basically, so what we figured out was that 80% of that data is actually just imprisoned in email. So when the person who wants to see how the supply chain is doing, he doesn't get that data, or so if he wants to get that data, then he needs to hire a lot of people just to crunch those numbers on Excel, and that data would also lead to a certain time lag. So the decisions that are being made in real time are actually decisions based on misinformation. What that eventually would lead to is lost sales. So if I had orders, let's say, if I had orders in Sakhar, I didn't know like there was demand for my product in Sakhar, but I could not lead to that because I had to open up a warehouse there, or I had to had some form of physical presence. So, or overstock loss. So I would just either create a big warehouse, store it in Karachi near in Port Qasim, or store it in Lahore in Sundar. But that would lead to like warehouse inflexibility, because I would not still be able to reach my customers, and I would have already spent a lot in fixed assets.
So, I mean, now how many warehouses you have across Pakistan?
So we have about 15 warehouses that we are operating on our own.
Okay.
And then we also...
Are they distributed, or they are concentrated in some major hubs?
So they're distributed. So we are actually on the eastern belt right now. So
Okay.
so right now we are covering 75% of Pakistan's population within the same day. So we can deliver products within the same day to 75%.
So when you say you can deliver products, so are you just a warehouse, or you are in the logistics business as well?
That's also an interesting story, because initially we just started operating as a warehousing company, but when customers came to us and started storing their goods, they asking us to arrange the transportation. So normally what happens in Pakistan, I think it happens in the rest of the world, is that already a lot of 3PLs or a lot of trucking drivers are located in these areas. So it's very normal to arrange transportation through them. So when we started getting those requests from our customers, we thought, okay, we need to manage this experience. We cannot just take it offline. And it was essential because customers needed that visibility of what was moving from what was moving from which warehouse to which location, and what was inside the truck as well. So so how we evolved as a company is that we started focusing on network optimization. So how strong your network is, what you're spending on your network, and then basically how you can increase your network in a very elastic way. So kind of like the AWS for warehousing. So you know, like if you want to get one pallet in, let's say, Islamabad, we have a warehouse there. You book it from us, and then we manage the distribution from there. If your sales start increasing in Islamabad, you can ramp up your pallet availability with us. So that's the model we're operating in, and essentially focusing on giving companies that network experience, where they know what is located in which warehouse and what is moving to which location.
Okay.
So kind of like the FedEx for B2B.
Sure. So, I mean, you opened up a warehouse and you were doing actually a capex on someone else's property and all that. I mean, it's like we have co-working spaces as well, where they are actually the experience is not so different from in a different tangent. But tell me, I mean, how much capacity you really have to utilize to make sure that your warehouse is now contributing positively within the overall bottom line, and I mean, how did you raise money, sell this to other investors? Because it has to be initially a capex heavy kind of a business.
Yeah, that's a tough question. So normally we're not investing in the capex. We get standard warehouses, and normally in Pakistan most of the storage is actually being done on a grounded. It's a grounded storage, so it's not vertical racking.
Okay.
So that makes it easy for us on the investing capex side. But on the unit
So you
economics,
didn't build any vertical racks as well?
no,
Okay.
we haven't yet.
Okay.
So if you look at the unit economics, normally, if you look at warehousing unit economics especially, there are two direct costs associated with warehousing. It's the rentals, and then it's the direct labor or the paralegal staff,
Right.
that is, so the pickers, the packers, the people who are actually within the warehouse. So these are the two costs that are directly attributed to your gross margin. I think that's where the technology part comes in. So using performance incentives, using optimizations on how much productivity we can get out of the pickers, standardizing the layout of the warehouse to ensure productivity. These are essential ways we try to lower the cost of labor per pellet or per on a warehouse level. Then on the rental side, so we cannot change the rentals because they're dictated by market forces, but that can essentially be solved by vertical racking. So right now, if we have, let's say if we have a 100 pellet warehouse, it's probably approximately about 10,000 square feet of space. And if you install vertical racking in that warehouse, we can multiply the available capacity into 5.
Right.
So that's where we can attribute.
But you are not into vertical racking right now.
We are not. We're doing grounded storage.
So the barrier to entry for someone like me, as compared to you already done that, is that you have built an experience and digitized the entire experience, and that has created attraction for your customers. So is it a fair comment at this point in time? I mean, if I have the capital and I run like 15 warehouses, but what gives you lead on me is really that the whole digitization and efficiency experience that you built. Is this correct?
Yeah, so I think more than that, it's basically being customer obsessed.
Okay.
So
that's customer experience.
Yeah.
Right,
So when we started out, we were at the customer's office every single day, asking them what their problem was, and this is also in a way.
And who's your? I mean, I'm jumping the question over here. Who's your ideal customer essentially? Is you mentioned that there are Nestle's, Arby's, and other MNCs, and then there's a mid-tier, and you're ideal for mid-tier. So is your, I mean, once you got into this warehousing, that ideal customer remained the same, or did you find that it changed?
It changed. So initially we were just focusing on the small, medium businesses. We knew like these people are the ones who really need it. But as we expanded our footprint, we saw MNCs approaching us as well. So we explored a new segment of demand where these MNCs have demand variations. So for example, a brand who's manufacturing chips, they have their peak season in the winters, and they need to procure a lot of potatoes. So they would need flexible space during that time, and then they would basically decrease that space.
It's like you need more salespeople during some holiday season and all that.
And then if you look at the beverage industry, they need more space during the summers.
Right.
So in essence, that we also found out that these companies were investing in long-term projects because there was no other player available. So we actually got an invitation to bid for one of the largest warehousing tenders in Pakistan. By an MNC. It was approximately about 1,000 tons of storage for potato chips. And initially we thought, okay, we cannot do it because we were just based in two cities, Lahore and Karachi at that point in time. But seeing the demand and seeing like what the actual problem was, it wasn't not the availability of space, it was managing that experience. An MNC can implement an SAP HANA software very easily. It would take them some time, they would have the capital. But what was happening was that these MNCs would have 2 or 3 different facilities, manufacturing facilities, run by 2 or 3 different people, like in terms of factory managers or logistics manager, and that visibility would be so divided, like person who's making the calls on the entire spend on supply chain would not get that information in real time. So we actually played as a bridge between that. So we were communicating all that information to that POC, the person who was in charge in real time, telling him where he was spending most on his supply chain, where he was getting the best visibility, who was operating on the best SLAs. So we were even able to figure out, so there was one manufacturing facility, it had a problem in their plant basically. So they were the chips that they were packaging were not right, so the labeling was done wrong. So when we had that visibility, we explained to them, like, look, on this day the night shift during these hours is not working fine, because the most of the products that are coming during this time have some discrepancies in them, and they were able to fix that within a matter of days. So this is what
So
we
you're
are
adding value back to their overall
exactly.
supply
So
chain,
this is this visibility actually helps the company in making those decisions in real time. So
So then how big is this addressable market? I mean, what do you see? I mean, there must be a very large market over here for warehousing, but what's your target market and addressable market overall?
So warehousing itself is a $4 billion market in Pakistan. These are the
Okay.
official numbers, but we see it's a bigger market. So there are a lot of godams, there are a lot of undocumented facilities that are operating. But if you look at our target market, so it's actually like focusing on supply chain services.
Okay.
And that includes warehousing and distribution through trucks. So that market is approximately about $35 billion in Pakistan, and it's growing. It's growing.
Because if e-commerce is going to grow more and more.
Not just because of e-commerce, because so for us, we're exclusively right now focusing on the B2B, so the businesses who are either manufacturing, who are either distributing a CPG product. So if you look at the numbers in Pakistan, our large scale manufacturing has actually grown a lot. So that means more goods are being manufactured, they need more space for storage, and then more trucks to deliver those products.
Right.
So this market is growing for us. But apart from that, what we've seen is interest from external players in the region who see this is a problem that exists in those markets as well. So a lot of our investors have also guided us to look at other markets. So if you look at Bangladesh, very similar economy to Pakistan, but they also don't have any fulfillment players, especially for B2B. They have last mile players, but not any for B2B.
What are the similarities in other markets with Oware? I mean, there are any startups, other companies operating a similar model as you guys are doing in some other markets?
So the closest and one of our inspirations is actually stored in the US. So this was actually when we started Oware, before we were doing the project ideation, so I basically looked at a lot of companies that were operating on the fulfillment model. So a lot of companies that were coming up were actually focusing on just e-commerce, but there were one company, it was stored, that was exclusively just operating for B2B.
Okay.
So that actually helped us get an idea about the problem that they were solving. Although it's a more developed economy, as in they have 3PL players over there, they have the technology, so they can easily integrate through APIs. But in Pakistan, or if you look at the developing world, we haven't found anyone who's basically operating on this model. We have the trucking marketplaces,
Right.
but they're more towards just the long haul movement of goods. They're not focusing on the core supply chain, which is network visibility. We are focusing on creating that network through combination of nodes and links. So nodes is anywhere where the product is stationary, link is anywhere where the product is movement, and getting that visibility through real-time operations back to the business. So they're fully
So
aware.
I know कि मेरा bag कहाँ पे है इस वक्त travel कर रहा है, it's stationed in a
Exactly. So normally like a courier company,
Yeah.
you would know it's checked in, it's at this fulfillment center, but nothing of this sort exists for the B2B vertical.
Okay. Your funding journey, where are you right now?
So we recently closed our pre-seed. We raised $3.3 million from Flexport, Ratio Ventures. So most of our funding actually came from the Silicon Valley. And then we have strategic angels that partnered with us, local angels, and then also strategic global angels that came into the round. Right now for us is to focus on building the fundamentals. Yes, we need to grow, but I think
So is the information public about pre-seed?
yes. So we
What's that? So how much you raised, at what caps and what?
So we raised $3.3 million at a valuation of $15 million.
Okay.
And majority of the leads were actually WVCF and Ratio Ventures, and then Flexport also came into the round. So these are
Okay.
the three prominent investors, and then we have the Osiris Group. So they're a private equity firm based out of Hong Kong. So these were the big investors in us,
Okay.
and then we have strategic angels.
So where do you see this growing by the end of 2022 in terms of warehouses and business?
2022.
Yeah.
So I think our team is pretty clear on the milestone that we need to achieve. So we need to have 100 customers, not a lot, but 100 customers with about 500,000 square feet of space across Pakistan. And the goal.
And how much space do you have today?
We have about 350.
Okay.
That's basically the space that we have, that we are operating on our own. But then we also partner with existing 3PLs. So if there is a 3PL who they have their own warehouse but it's not utilized, they can give that space to us and we bring it onto the platform.
Okay.
And so the goal right now is we are covering 75% of the population within the same day, and the goal is to bring it to 90%.
Great.
So 90%, any business who comes to us, we'll be able to deliver within the same day to 90%.
And when are you raising your next round? When do you see you raising your next round?
I think right now for us, the strategy is to just have a good runway till 2022 that
Okay.
we already have, and then go towards Series A after 2022, so probably 2023.
And how big is your team at this point in time?
So we have about 65 people that are working with us.
So how much, what's the kind of distribution, tech, warehouse operations and all that?
So we have a 20% engineering team and product team, mostly a lot of people in operations, and then a strategy team and marketing team.
So you two co-founders are the ones who are really heading the product? Or
I'm heading the product. Raza is exclusively just looking after the operations and the supply side. So he's the one who's making calls to all the real estate brokers and everyone of just finding the warehousing space, while I'm working on the strategy and the engineering side.
Okay. So I guess wonderful information, and good luck with your venture, and I hope to see you soon again in 6-8 months or in a year and see where you are going. So thank you for being with us today.
No, and thank you so much, Umair.